Welcome back. It's another episode of The Calling. Thank you for joining. I am Jay Rye, and this is my friend Jorge. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so Jorge and I have so many conversations that go, in great detail. It was literally of deciding for your visit today of like, okay, well, what are we going to narrow it down to? Because we have so many, discussions. Something I thought that would be of value would be us talking about, quieting the mind. Because we have many conversations about, like when we're right in the midst of that stress or that angst, it's something's going on and part of our friendship is, of course, sort of, talking each other through that. So I don't know, is that a place to start?
Yeah, it's good. I mean, and you mentioned reptilian brain, how you also you wish that you were a reptile.
Well, I mentioned, that hasn't happened yet. So, I mean, we talked about that in the pre-show, which nobody saw. But I did say that there are days that I would enjoy the idea of turning off the analytical mind. Because there's days I'm just tired of thinking and analyzing and trying to be concerned about my actions and other people's actions. And so there is an attraction for me to just being able to be reptilian for a moment,
Yeah, and I think if you look at the history of humanity, history of philosophy, history of ideology, of dogma, of all these things, we see this pendulum swing from social cohesion to anarchy, where social cohesion is under a dogma, and it means sacrificing what the pleasures of now, like a reptile wouldn't do, for prudence, for forced thought of like getting the food later, right? When you as a farmer, right? And so that forethought, that civilization of us, gives us, the civilized human, this need to be primal and to go back to the basics and to go back to like the experience of sensorial experience, right? And so we're always going back as a society, between one and the other. And it's true still, obviously, today, because we know our analytical mind, our prudence, our forethought says we need to get along with people, and we're doing this dance, social dance, that that other animals don't have as much. I mean, the primates have it, of course, and many animals have the social structure, but not as complete as us, with culture and ideologies that unify us all, right? And so it's incredible when you realize how much of all of this is in the wiring of our brain.
Of course.
Right? And the idea of thought as an object, or is it an object, are we an object, and we go into deconstructing ourselves down to the reptilian brain. But for something that I didn't know, for example, is that their limbic brain, or cerebellum, has 4 times as much neural connections as the whole brain put together. So the reptilian brain.
Yeah. It makes sense.
It does.
It makes sense, especially, if you're watching a true crime show. It's like there's things that you can't understand, but then it's like when you hear something like that about the reptilian brain being wired like that, it's like, oh, well, you do understand. Because deep down we are still just animals.
Yeah.
Regardless of how advanced we want to think that, we are at times, right? But how specifically do you actually quiet the mind? Because if we're bouncing back and forth between reptilian mind and our thoughts right now, how do you quiet it?
Well, first understanding the wiring, right? Like if we take that we are like a machine, basically, with a computer and with a software a cultural operating system. You kind of have to like hack yourself in a way, right? So you have to understand what the belief system you're operating under is, and just go down the layer. So the easiest way to quiet the mind probably is like when you recognize the awareness of that all of this is an illusion. Really, that's one thing. And then when you realize who the fuck is having the problem or the anxiety, and you realize there's nobody there, the lights are on inside you, but when you take a look at, and when you actually are able to, so we are a narrative species, right? Like we create narratives, and narratives are the way we transmit memes to the next generation. So it's basically like a genetic code, it's a mimetic code. And so we're wired to repeat these stories to ourselves to give us a sense of identity. but it's all in a story. And our mind, just like our heart, beats information into us, stories into us. But the more primal brain, the cerebellum, is analyzing things that are far, like I think it's like 1,000 or 1,000,000 times faster, right? So our brain comes up with a story to confirm the feeling that we have about whatever. And if you're able to breathe, basically, and not engage in the story and observe it, then you can understand that the story is generated by a feeling. And if you move into the feeling of that is generated, that is the source of the story, then you kind of depower the feeling, because you realize that the feeling is just an object, and just like any object is just an illusion in an illusory space, which is called consciousness. So it's a little bit of a hacking, and it might be a little bit of a, I mean, I could give you the recipe, just breathe and observe your thoughts, right? Like that would be the quiet of the mind. But when you're in this stress, anxiety, and these rational thoughts don't really come to mind, and this is where good friends like you come in mind, come to mind, and are very, very useful to be able to pull us out and say, listen, remember that this is just a story.
Well, that's what I was getting at, is because I was like, okay, well, that's a cute theory on
right.
how we quiet the mind. But let's talk in reality, though, right. Of like, whatever, of even like this past week, right? So if there's stress and there's, as irrelevant or as, inconsistent as the thoughts may be, there are times when the thoughts are extremely powerful and believable in that moment.
Yes.
And that logic of, the logical cure, as perhaps you were giving us there, right? Like, that is not coming to mind.
Right.
So I'm saying let's talk about outside of the theory, like,
right.
When it's not working.
Yeah, I mean, everybody can tell you, like, to be fit or to do this, you just have to eat right, sleep, and work out, but yet we don't do it, right? All these things. But the idea is basically incorporate practices into your daily life that when you fall out of alignment, then you at least have that practice. And if you start having this type of healthy practices for your consciousness, for your brain, for your body, you naturally start connecting with other people that also have this type of practices, and that also speak that language, and that also are aware. So the easiest thing is when you have a problem, make a call. Me, when I'm depressed, that's not the first thing that happens to my mind. I might get into this story, into this rabbit hole, until I'm able to like have a moment of insight and be like, hold on, this is like overwhelming me, let me call a friend. I call a friend, and if everybody's available, then we meet, and then it's song is like, oh yeah, I just needed to get out of the fucking apartment, because I've been 2 weeks in my apartment, because of COVID, because of many factors other than COVID, right?
Yeah. So right in this moment, right, that we're filming this, we're still in quarantine, and there, not to divert, but there are so many extra factors that are happening right now that it is easy to get lost in ourselves, in our heads, in our bedroom, because we aren't going to shows anymore. We aren't socializing. We aren't playing football in the park anymore. Like, there are so many things that we did to make us happy, consciously or subconsciously, of just getting out in the park, seeing people laughing and playing, and we're not doing that, for good reason at some level. But I think that's absolutely something that if we're not, staying aware of that, like, absolutely, you can get depressed quickly.
Mm-hmm. And you don't notice it, right? It's like
a slippery slope. It's just like, it just creeps up on you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think we've even begun to see, the true toll of what this is going to have. Sure, the news, reports on infections, and they report on, deaths, and good old America's number one, in the worst possible way. But outside of that, I think moving forward, like, we're going to have all sorts of, mental health issues that come from this. Children not socializing, people being stuck inside, the fear, the doubt, all of these things that just are completely percolating right now, whether we're aware of them or not.
Yeah, and the power of social media, like the social media is the only drug right now, social drug that we're getting.
Yeah.
And I think that we should also think about, we're social animals, and it's analogous to when you're dehydrated. Like when you're dehydrated.
Tell me about this dehydration thing.
So if you feel thirsty, you're already dehydrated, right? Like our body is good at many things, but not to tell you when it's dehydrated. When you're already feeling the state of dehydration, you're already like dumb. Your IQ drops, which is interesting. Like you don't think about like, oh, let me drink water. Oh, I'm depressed. Let me call a friend. Like it doesn't come to your mind because your cognitive ability literally drops.
Oh, for sure. I've heard about this.
It's so interesting. I was watching this talk on TED where it was like they talk about poverty in the same way. Like the people, those who think like, oh, it's their fault, what bootstrap mentality, they don't understand that when you're in the base level of reality, in the limbic brain, of like get food, shelter, your IQ literally drops as well. Like because you're so stressed about getting whatever that you don't think about the most. It's like basically they compare it to you're operating under a no sleep situation. Like you didn't sleep 24 hours, and then you're making decisions. Of course, you're gonna make terrible decisions. Like I make terrible decisions when I'm hungover, or like imagine like when you're stressed about the basic conditions, and you're on top of that asking them to get a degree or go back to school and get their life to go, whatever it is, right? Like that people are asking, and it's very similar, right? Like when we get into this high alert mode of limbic reptilian, you don't think about the big picture. You don't have forethought. You don't have prudence. You just go for the immediate thing that is going to give you the satisfaction that you need. So you go for food, you go for drugs, you go for whatever, just to numb that state as opposed to have the insight. And that's why it's incredibly important to have a community around you that will either be like that we're all checking on each other. COVID, I think, has shown that we are all very good at taking care of one another. I think that there's a very, very incredibly positive things about this social experiment with COVID. And a lot of it's very easy to throw stones at the problem and everything. I want to like focus on what have we learned about ourselves, about our own selves and our community and our global perspective on the world. Like this is incredible. It's almost in a way for the consciousness of humanity. It's one of the most amazing things that have happened to us. Since the Second World War, with the nuclear war, where everything was like, oh, nuclear power. Right. Now the world order has changed, and now it's like, oh, COVID. The whole world now is interconnected. Now everything has to change.
Sure.
And I don't know. I hope that
now we're virus and epidemic and pandemic power.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a nuclear bomb for all of humanity.
It's a lot cheaper than an arms race. That's for sure.
And everybody can do it now in their lab, right? Like you can do polio now in your lab.
Right.
Which goes, into the whole social cohesion. Let's all vaccinate.
So, as you may or may not have already noticed, yes, this is exactly how we get completely off in different directions. So that was probably about 5 different episodes in one right there. But give me just one more thought on again, if we're in COVID, even if we're not in COVID quarantine, give me one more take on quieting the mind.
Quieting the mind. I like to observe the observer. It's probably the most strongest way to quiet the mind. I think that when you realize that you're looking at something or listening to something or having an experience, and then you turn the camera around and look for the person or whoever, whatever is observing. My experience when I do that, it's like my brain is on overdrive trying to see who is looking, and of course there's nobody there. It's just a space. It's just a clear open space, and things appear. Mm-hmm. And so basically when you realize that your consciousness is basically a mirror of the universe that is being projected by your brain, I'm already like a very crazy person when it comes to I thought I'm always one after the other. So at least that leads me into the direction of submission.
Right. Yeah.
I submit to reality, which is an open space. And that I was like, okay, fine. This is it, right? So it's like
submitting and offering surrender. Yeah. I mean, it's a great take if you can at least get yourself into that state, or reach out to somebody who can help press
remind you
towards that state,
yeah.
Well, it's like the saying that I've had with several of my friends for many years, which is please take this great advice that I'm not using. So it's like we could be exceptional advisors for each other, and then when we need sometimes that exact same little nugget, we forget because we're in it and we're letting it consume too much energy in the moment. But yeah.
But we're like a fire, right? Like tomorrow your fire might be out. Your awareness, right? That this is all what this is. And this is why it's so important to have community. Like it's so important because it's where you keep each other. Whenever you're never gonna be Zen all the time. I mean, I think that would be boring, actually.
It would be boring, and the wardrobe's boring too, with the monk robes and things like that.
I actually like the word of not thinking about a non-Western, non-marketed outfit. I haven't gone to that transition yet. Not that I'm going to go into a monk outfit because it's another outfit.
Yeah.
But like the idea of constructing your own persona without any preconceptions.
I agree. There's no brands in this picture too. I don't think there's any brands. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of doing that either.
Yeah.
Until they pay.
That's right. And then I'll take it.
Maybe. Anyway, thanks for watching. It's The Calling. Again, it's Jay Rai. This is my friend Jorge. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.